What do you bench?
400.
Squat?
More like 5.
Welcome aboard.
The bench press. Anyone who knows you go to the gym will ask you how much you can do. It's a movement that seems pretty simple at first glance, but it's actually somewhat difficult. You can get as far as you want with just pressing and going, but there does come at a certain point what's your breakdown in your technique going to look like. And that's what's going to pretty much plateau you no matter how strong you are. At a certain point, you have to learn techniques, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. Sticking points, look at the bench press, look at the couple of different points we're looking at, and we'll look at how we can push past those points.
If one man can hold you down, two can rape you.
Exercises that might help you get past those points, and exercises that will just help you in general get stronger with your bench press. First couple points, those are going to be your hand positionings. Your hand positioning is pretty much going to be as simple as it sounds, where you grab the bar. Everyone's hand positioning is going to be different based on their anatomy and how comfortable they are with their shoulder mobility. You're going to see a lot of different kinds of hand variations, but it really is going to come down to what you're most comfortable doing. Don't try to do anything that you're not comfortable or able to do. I started with calisthenics, so for me, my most comfortable hand positioning is going to be right at the tip of the knurling. Right at the tip of the knurling is where you're going to pretty much, so you'll put your webs, your hands right into here. This is the closest position you can get where it's comfortable. The most really common one you'll see is thumb width. That's probably the most common one you'll see against really all lifting groups. You'll take your thumbs at the tip of the knurling, and that's about as wide as you'll go. You'll see things like pinky on the ring, where you'll look at the first ring on the knurling, and you'll place your pinkies and line that up right directly where you're going to be placing your hands, directly on the ring. Do and don't recommend that one. All you really have to know is that the wider you get with your hand mobility, the more strain it's going to cause on your front delts and your shoulders. So do keep that in mind if that's something you're worried about. If you haven't injured shoulders of any kind, do not go any wider. I will not sweat that enough. Hand in hand with your hand placement is your back positioning. The whole setup for the bench press really starts with these two moments, where you put your hands and how you can press your back into that bench. So once you find your hand positioning, you're going to sink your back into the pretty much pad as best you can. You want to, in a way, wrap your rear delts around this pad and press your traps into that bench press as best you can. So that's going to look something like this. You'll get your traps in, retract your scapula, and that'll be your back positioning. You got to feel tight. You'll feel it all throughout your lats and your upper back. That's kind of in the sense where you'll know if you're comfortable. The next thing that brings all those three things together is going to be your leg positioning.
I got it. Watch out, Sketch. I got it.
A lot of people don't think about using their legs in a bench press movement because they think it's just a bench press. They think it's only a chest movement. Your legs are going to be a key factor in the succession of your bench. If you don't have good leg drive, you will not have a good bench. And that's pretty much as simple as that gets. Get your hand positioning, get your wedge for your back, make sure your bar is aligned pretty much directly over your eyeballs is kind of where you want your bar to be at majority of the time. There's 3 primary different leg positioning you can have for your bench press. If your toes off the ground, that'll help you if you're more of an archer in the bench press, which pretty much determines how much your lower back comes off the bench. So for me personally, as someone who's done powerlifting, I find it most comfortable to keep my heels on the ground. That's the most comfortable positioning for me. But if you feel like you need to have your heels off the ground for any reason to get better leg drive, that's completely up to you. Another very common thing you'll see is your legs a little further out. Some people find that more comfortable in the sloping of leg drive, where you'll pretty much bring it down and then you'll rock forward. That's another really common thing you'll see very often with a lot of different people. Those are going to be your main setup cues that you need to pay attention to if you want to succeed at the bench press. A lot of people are going to be very confused on how leg drive works. There are a lot of different ways you can think of how you want to use leg drive. Larry Wheel said that in one of his videos, and he can bench like 800 pounds.
Drive, rather than thinking about driving straight into the floor,
Right.
think about doing a leg extension without your feet leaving the ground.
Right. And
When that happens, you go up the bench rather
Right.
than having your butt come off the bench.
Come on.
All right. So once you feel comfortable with your positioning and your setup in the bench press, that is when you can start putting some weight on the bar. Find your hand positioning. For me, that's right here on the knurling, so that's where I'm going to grab it. I'm going to wedge my back as hard as I can into the bar, place my feet flat on the ground, push your shoulders forward, and then you'll, instead of having them outwards like this, you don't want that, retract and tilt your elbows inwards. That'll pretty much force your shoulders to retract and get in the proper positioning. So once you feel comfortable, you get it right above, like roughly about where your chin-ish is. You'll go down, take about a 2 to 3 second pause.
What?
In powerlifting, it's pretty common for there to be a pause at the bottom of the rep range. So because they'll pretty much say you don't press it until that bar is out of motion. So as you can see, it's out of motion. You get some kind of a press command. Then once you're in proper positioning, do about a 1 to 2 second pause at the bottom. Then you go press. So when you're ready, you reset, start, press. That's the entire movement. Okay, so sticking points. Your bench press has 3 primary moments of muscle activation where you're going to see some kind of problem if you're not well advanced in those positionings. We're going to go over sticking points and what they're going to look like. You're going to have 3 major ones. You're going to have one right at the bottom, one right at the middle-ish position, and one right, and some people have it right at the top. So I'm going to show you what those are going to look like. And then we're going to talk about what exercise you have to do to get past those sticking points of pretty much how you can, in a way, push past whatever plateaus you might be facing due to those sticking points. So sticking points you're going to find. You're going to find one right here at the bottom where you pretty much can't get this bar off your chest. You're pretty much stuck in this range of motion right here. This range of motion is mostly affected by your chest not being well adverse enough to be able to push past it and get past this point. So if your chest is the weakest point in the bench press, that means you need to start incorporating some kind of chest exercises. Those can be done with either a Larson press with a lighter weight, where you take the entirety of leg drive out of the window. You don't use your legs whatsoever. Your legs will be sticking either straight out or you'll have them sat on the pad. Those are ways you can do that. You can build chest strength through pretty much any other pushing exercise that works in a way to help build the strength in your chest. And I'm going to mention in pretty much all of these sticking points is some kind of pin press variation. Set your safety bars, however they may be, directly to that position. I'd probably go one more up, but I don't have them even.
Stupid.
So the safety pins are pretty much directly right where your failure point is. So really common sticking point for a lot of people is, rather than me not being able to get at the bottom with your chest being too weak, it's this point of motion about right here. This point of motion is directly tied to your shoulder strength. The increased shoulder strength, training shoulders. I'd highly recommend doing some kind of shoulder press variation, either a barbell overhead press or shoulder press, or a dumbbell shoulder press of some kind. So really all that comes down to is building shoulder strength so you can get out of that area. Same thing as I mentioned with the pin press, use that to your advantage. Most people started directly on the pins, right about here. So this is pretty much about an inch or so above where your chest should be. You'll wedge your back into a good positioning with your arms, find your proper knurling width, and then this is where you're pretty much pressing from. This is going to help build strength in that range of motion where you cannot progress. So brace, press, right at the top, control on the way down, press. You have to face this one. This is the lockout portion where your arms, instead of being fully locked out with your triceps activated, it's right here. And just like I mentioned, because your triceps are weak, do your compounds, hit your accessories hard, do tricep extensions, do overhead tricep extensions, do pretty much whatever you can. There are a lot of different ways you can build strength in the bench press. There are a lot of different common variations you can do and different exercises. What I'm going to recommend for the average person to do to build strength in their bench press is simply bench press as often as you can. I don't mean bench press so much where you injure yourself or hurt your and strain your joints. If you're bench pressing once a week, you'll bench press twice a week. And if you feel like you're not progressing at twice a week, you'll bench press 3 times a week. So if one's no, twice. If twice is no, thrice. Program yourself for different variations of the bench press so you can get better at those ranges of motion. What I'm going to show you guys is going to be the pause bench press. And here's the key with the pause. It's a somewhat long pause, about 2 to 3 seconds. So you'll bring it down. 1, 2, 3, press. That's the pause. You want to keep that bar at that pretty much placed directly in your chest for really only 2 to 3 seconds. Why is that beneficial? Because it builds strength without having to use momentum that you'll see a lot of people do. So this is what a technique that's called the Larson press. It takes your legs out of the equation pretty much, but just keep them off the ground so that way you can't utilize them. You want to think about the Larson press as your standard bench press without your legs in the equation. Break it down, press. All you're doing is using straight upper body strength to get that weight up. Okay, so now that we've gone through all the different variations and sticking points, what other exercises besides just plain bench pressing can you do that will help and directly incorporate to your bench press strength? I'd recommend doing some kind of dumbbell flat pressing variation. I'd recommend an incline barbell bench press. I'd recommend rather than doing flat, you do that once a week instead of doing flat twice or thrice. Another exercise I'd highly recommend more than really anything is some kind of weighted dip variation. Weighted dips are pivotal to building bench pressing strength. You can either do them on your standard parallel bars that are right to the sides. You can do straight bar dips. Those are a little more advanced. Those involve some kind of calisthenic strength. I do those regularly. I do them once a week on my push days, and on my primary upper days, I will do parallel dips. I'd highly recommend once you're advanced enough in doing dips, you begin adding weight to the equation, and that will really skyrocket your bench in ways that you really won't see very often. Another thing I'd say is really just hammer in those isolations, do your pec flies, do your tricep push downs, do anything that helps build up that chest, shoulder, and tricep volume. We'll look at everything, the full setup for the bench press, and you'll pretty much look at it like a checklist. Get the bar in positioning. You'll reach back at whatever your desired hand positioning. Mine's directly right here at the tip of the knurling, so that's where I'm going to go back. So grab your hand positioning, wedge your back in. So you can either do that by doing a little shimmy to get your back really nice and tight on the bench. Then plant your feet. So we'll get our hand positioning, feet, brace, unrack, retract your shoulders so they're not sticking out, twist those elbows in, and then you want that bar to come down in that arc. So right here at the bottom of your chest, right at the top of your abdomen, press. That's the bench press. Let me know if you guys have any questions regarding the bench press. Please feel free to comment any questions personally facing with the bench press, or please feel free to reach me on any of my social platforms. I hope that all you guys can pretty much gain whatever kind of strength or information you did. If you already knew all this information and you just like the content, please feel free to like, subscribe, leave a comment. Leave any movements in the comments you guys like to see me cover in another video. We're going to go over the main 3 first. So we're starting off with bench press. Next video, we're going to go over deadlift. Video after that, we'll go over squats. And then you guys from there can leave me any questions you guys are facing, some kind of movement pattern. And if I can help you out in any way, I will. So that pretty much brings it into the video. Stay strong, be yourself, and just take your time, and you will see progress. Progress takes time. You will not see results overnight unless you're pinning needles in your ass. So take your time, practice your bench press, and you will see results. That is the best advice I can give you, is just bench more.